Well, hello and welcome to what we're going to call another one-off uh, for our video series. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Uh, Hopefully, for most of you, should be at least a day or two after Christmas. Hopefully, you had a wonderful time, either with family, friends. I know a couple people that went traveling actually on the holiday to spend time during the time off with friends, and also hopefully you're enjoying that time getting some rest and relaxation. I'm actually taking a quick break from work. Wanted to share a quick thought. I'd mentioned previously that I was going to do something out of the Psalms. I'm going to save that a little bit later in the time. What I'm planning for the rest of the year is just taking quick moments for daily Proverbs, taking one verse, maybe two, to at least give a couple thoughts, a couple ideas, in hopefully relating it to practical living today. If you are not familiar with going through Proverbs, there could call. Wow, I've got so many ideas. I'm trying to rush in a short time frame. The book of Proverbs is treated typically by Christians as a collection of thoughts, of ideas, of wisdom in very practical verses. Sometimes it'll be multiple verses, sometimes it'll be one verse that sits and just really speaks out to you. And so what I wanted to do is look at what would be today's proverb, so to speak, Proverbs 26, and hopefully, again, just give you one big thought. Not going to be expository again. That will come eventually, where we take times and actually do more expanded thoughts over certain passages. But today, again, trying to keep it something simple, kind of like a thought of the day, something to help you as you go through at whatever day you listen to it and hopefully apply it. In Proverbs 26, verses 4 and 5, I remember being a younger kid seeing these passages and wondering what exactly, how does this work? Because if you don't know them, verse 4 says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him." Verse 5, "Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit." Now, there are other verses in the psalm, or in the proverb, that are very similar in the message. Later on, talking about foolishness in verse 11, it says, "As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly." That's another verse that could have been the one off for the day, but I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, you know. So let's look at these two verses really quick, where it says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him. And then answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit." And you know what? I was guilty of this. If we flash back, there was an argument I had with my child. Now, the content of the argument is not as important as at least not at first. As we look at the first verse where it says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be like unto him." So in my argument with this child, I was starting to use his rationale, his philosophy, in the way I was responding to him. I was telling a friend of mine that I was getting emotional and getting caught up in the conversation and starting to respond similar to him. And because of it, I fell victim to this verse. I was answering according to his folly. And I was just like I was becoming silly. It was becoming irrational in its thought process, and it was completely losing focus on what needed to be addressed and what needed to be dealt with. And the Bible says here, don't do that. It's easy when you get caught up in a conversation and you're trying to hopefully correct the thinking or the process. Instead, what you end up doing is, if you allow emotion, if you leave the fact, or if you stay in that argument too long, you fall victim to verse number 4. Now, the problem we get into that is usually because of verse number 5, because we put a high value on trying to correct the person. When you look at it, it says, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. Unless that person gets caught up in their way of thinking, you don't want that to happen. Now, very similar to what I've constantly said in dealing with people, what is the purpose? What is the reason for you taking the action you're doing against somebody else? I've had conversations where someone will say, they have to know this. This other person that I'm arguing or discussing, they have to know this. Why do they have to know it? What is your reason? What is your purpose? Why have you deemed yourself the person to make this determination, to make this decision? Why? And if you've not come up with a good reason other than I have to, that's not a good enough reason. The Bible tells us here that if you're going to make that movement, if you're going to make that decision, if you're going to make the instruction to correct this person, it's so that they're not developed into their own conceit. But if you really want to look at it, it goes back to even the series we discussed leading up to Christmas. Are we doing this out of love? See, if I'm trying to get my child or my friend or my coworker or whoever it is to take proper steps in living, whatever it is, my goal should be out of love. There shouldn't be an arrogance. It shouldn't be, as it says in the Bible, conceit. It shouldn't be an arrogance. It should be, I'm in like, as a parent, I'm responsible for my child. As a friend, I'm responsible to a point to be an encouragement to my friend. But is that the reason I'm doing it, or am I doing it out of arrogance, out of conceit, out of, oh, they need to know this? Otherwise, I'm going to fall victim to verse 4 again. I'm going to fall victim to the same thing that they're falling victim to. So as you go out today and you start dealing with people, day after Christmas, I do work today, and I expect completely to see people upset about many number of things, dealing with their business with us. And the thing I have to remember inside is, how am I going to deal with these people? Maybe I don't love all the customers that I deal with at work, but there's a duty, there's a responsibility I have, and the job pays for the bills, and in order to pay the bills, there's a responsibility to love and be responsible. I can sit there and draw it out to say there's a responsibility I have in how I deal with my customers. And honestly, it will never profit me in any business, at any job, to answer a fool according to his folly, or answer not a fool. Don't become like them. Don't argue like them. Having an argument with a customer in the same rationale that they're being foolish, you're never going to prosper in that. But what you want to do is address facts and address the actual situation. And in a case of interpersonal relationships, when I'm dealing with someone, the purpose, the goal is to deal with the issue. And then once I've expressed it, once I've addressed it, that's it. Don't continue on with it and continue on with it and continue on with it, because then what I'm doing is I'm falling victim to verse 4 again. The reason I tell the personal part of it about my own interaction is there came a point that eventually, and unfortunately took too long to get there, is where I say, okay, now we've left the tracks. We've gone away from dealing with the issue, and now I'm now falling victim to the same thing. And it becomes embarrassing and honestly shameful that you allow yourself to get caught up in something like that. And that's not how we're supposed to deal with each other. So my challenge to you today, as you go about, you're going to be dealing with people, or maybe hopefully you're not the person that's the fool that's being conceited and thinking in their own ways. I know it's a kind of an interesting way of approaching it, but that's what I think we should do. Answer not a fool according to his folly. Don't be like that foolish person when you're responding to them. And then do address the issue if it needs addressing. But once it's addressed, be done with it, move forward. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.